lot of, it gives the pictures of the state of the economy, but also it is, forward-looking. How Bangladesh should, do its reform in 2030. So let me just, start with something in the beginning of the book. You have mentioned that the economic progress Bangladesh has made, it is the combination of effort of various players, including the public sector, private sector, and the non-government sectors. But just to go back to the history, when Bangladesh was liberated in 1971, we inherited a war-torn economy, and that time a lot of foreign funds came for the reconstruction and rehabilitation, and that not only helped people to have their homes rebuilt, but also the money had been invested or utilized for health and education, and also for microcredit, which helped for women's empowerment. So if you look at the trajectory of Bangladesh's progress, social progress preceded economic progress. Now, over the next 50 plus years, the economy has moved forward, and we had observed high growth. Then again, a decline, because you also mentioned that the presence of crony capitalism, and corruption, lack of governance, and all these, and which has led to reverse the social progress which were made in the early as in early 1970s. In fact, Bangladesh still is a forerunner in case of social progress, social indicators, not only within South Asia, but also among the least developed countries, among many developing countries, large developing countries also, because of the investment, the effort which were put early on. But the pattern of economic development which we have observed during the last 1.5 decade, this whole progress, not only the macroeconomic stability, but also the social progress has started to reverse, which is quite worrying, because the development stands on 3 pillars. You have very rightly mentioned about the economic, social, and environmental sustainability. Unless we have a growth which takes care of the environment, that growth cannot be sustainable. And you have mentioned about green growth. I really appreciate that. So all the chapters and the social, the manifestation of the inequality you have mentioned in the macro chapter, but also in the health and education sector, and women's chapter also mentions that how the progress went, but still where we are standing. In case of macro, you very rightly mentioned about various policy-related challenges. In case of Bangladesh, to my mind, and many of you would also agree that we have problems, 2-3 types of problems in case of policy. One is that policy inertia. When there is a problem, we take a lot of time to think about it, and also sometimes resist for taking that type of policy. And there are in many cases, Naseem has mentioned quite rightly, and because he is on the ground, the absence of right kind of policy, so policy absence. And then even if you have policies, the inadequacy of the policies, inconsistency of the problems. So in the end, the policies become very ineffective. And there is also the discontinuity of policies, which affects the sectors, and including the private sector. We have heard about the capture, policy capture, state capture. So state capture has happened because of the policy capture. Who are the drivers of changing the policies? We have seen that sectors like the financial sector, banking sector, where were the policies being made during the past regime or so? Is it the central bank or is it the commercial banks themselves? No, from outside. So Salim has mentioned towards the end that why there is no urge for making reforms, because the political structure has become such that the nexus between the politicians and the business community and also bureaucracy and both civil and military bureaucracy all had created such a nexus that it had become very profitable not to change the policies. And we have seen that over the years how the business community turned into politicians, firstly to protect their businesses because of the law and order situation, so rent-seeking behavior, all these, but then also it gave them immense power to change the policies itself. So that's why the concept of conflict of interest was totally absent. Those who are in the businesses, they would be ministers of the same sector or so. So that type of anomaly really cannot, allow the economy to function independently. So that's why we had a period when we had observed the macroeconomic stability, but it did not sustain because the fundamentals were not strong enough. Of course, we had growth, but what kind of growth? We had growth without employment generation. We had growth without investment, be it domestic private investment or foreign private investment. And then we have also seen that how ad hocism had worked in case of policies. The structure of the revenue collection, dependency on indirect taxes, and also less dependency on the direct income tax avoidance and all these. So these are not isolated issues, I would say. If you just look at every sector, the most important ones, the banking sector, the power and energy sector, infrastructure, they're all connected in one issue, you can say, or one kind of characteristic features, is that these are the sectors which are very crucial for the economy and also very investment heavy, and these are the sources of finance. So these were also influenced by the political authorities, and there has not been any incentive to change it.